so. But we're going to keep it going right now with Casey, Bubba, Adam Ronis, and Frank Stanfill. Oh, man. Casey, if only you were on our softball team right now, we have 3 out of 4 here on that wonderful team. But thank you guys so much for being a part of PitchCon. I'm going to get out of your hair so you can talk on this panel. But thank you guys so much for being here.
Well, thanks for having us, Nick. Everybody, this is going to be a fun one. We're talking hitters we're targeting throughout the draft. But before we do so, give you guys all the floor to talk a little bit about yourselves and what you guys got going on. So, Mr. Adam Ronis, you can find him on Twitter at Adam Ronis and Fantasy Alarm and SiriusXM. How are we doing today?
Doing pretty good. I know Frank. Frank's kind of like my son in a way. I might be his dad, but he's a little light, so I don't think he's my kid. But Frank and I go way back, so it's good to be on a panel with him. I am proud of Frank to see how far he has come. Remember him as an intern getting hot dogs at like 6 a.m. And now look at him. He's a big star. But I've been in this industry for a while, probably since full-time, like 2008, started off with Roto Experts. That's where I met Frank and been on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio since 2010. Also doing a show now on the Better Sports Network. Do some contributions for MSG TV for sports betting. I have a podcast with Howard Bender, Cash It. Just dropped a new episode today. I do a multitude of sports, but fantasy baseball to me is one of the best sports. I think it's the most challenging. It's very difficult to win. It takes a lot of work, and I always enjoy it. So I also do basketball. Frank is in my home fantasy basketball league as well. Currently looking up at me, barely though, but he's always competitive in that league. Obviously do a lot of fantasy football stuff too and sports betting. So it's a good time of year as we get set for fantasy baseball. So I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun one. And we mentioned, Adam mentioned Mr. Frank Stanfill quite a bit. I got to start with Frank over on FNTSY for a little, I think that's what it was, for a bit, a couple of shows with you over there. But man, talk about big time, like Adam said, Mr. CBS Sports over there. Fantasy baseball today, does football and everything. You can find him on Twitter at Roto_Frank. Frank, how we doing, my friend?
Doing very well. Happy to be here. Adam Ronis, great introduction. As always, happy to work with you, buddy. Yeah, we go way back, Ronis and I do. Started Roto Experts, Fantasy Sports Network. Used to have Bubba on there doing some radio hits. So we've worked our way up. Now, Fantasy Baseball Today over at CBS Sports. You can listen to the podcast. But yeah, really looking forward to this one. I had the pleasure of meeting Bubba in person recently at First Pitch, Arizona. The eyes on this guy, I mean, I've got to bring it up. These pearly blues are like something you've never seen. I had to ask if his eyes were real. That's how, this guy has amazing eyes. I know it's like a really weird way to start this, but
it's fitting. It's fitting.
Wait, Frank, aren't you married? Frank, you're married, right?
Yeah, I am. But
it's not going so well.
First Pitch Arizona is like going to Vegas. It's what happens in Arizona stays in Arizona.
Yeah, you can look, but you can't touch, Ronis.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't live by that, but
it was a fun time. Great time in Arizona, as always. Pleasure meeting you there, Frank. It's gonna be a fun show we have here. 2023 hitters. I'll plug my stuff real quick. The Bench with Bubba podcast coming at you multiple times a week. Frank's been on there before. We've got to get Adam on there one of these days. It's tons of fun, written content at Baseball HQ and Fantasy Pros, and also Gaining the Edge Fantasy with a group of guys that we're doing our Patreon and everything. So fun stuff there. And we're going to talk 2023 hitters to target. We're going to use NFBC ADP. We're going to kind of do it in ranges, 1 through 50 ADP, 51 through 100, so on and so forth. See where it takes us. Have a little fun with it. So let's kind of go in a circle here. We'll start with you, Adam. When you look at ADP 1 through 50, obviously these guys are really good. That's why they go so early in the draft. So you could probably make an argument for most of these guys if you really wanted to. But who's maybe one guy you're really kind of circling in 1 through 50?
Yeah, I'm not going to go all the way up top. That's too easy. And like you said, they're obviously good. So I'll go down a little further. And I'm going to go with Matt Olson. He's a guy that I tend to have on my teams quite a bit. Now, I know the average is a little bit of a question mark. We've seen it kind of fluctuate throughout the years. It was 240 last year, but it was also his first season with a new team. And sometimes we see players struggle that first year. We really didn't see it with Olsen, at least in the power department with the 34 home runs, over 100 RBIs. It's a really good lineup. Also, maybe with the ban of the shift, that could help Olsen a little bit as a left-handed hitter. Maybe we could see that average go up. We have seen 271 and 267 in recent years. Obviously, in the 2020 shortened season, we saw an outlier with the 195. And the other thing with Olsen too is he tends to play every day. I mean, 162 games 2 times in the last 5 years. In the 2020 season, all 60 games, 156 2 years ago. Just 2019 was a year he had 127 games, but pretty much plays every day. You know you're going to get power out of him. This is a really good Braves lineup. So I know you're not getting speed out of him, but I think especially if the first couple of rounds, if you're able to get guys that contribute steals across the board the first 2 rounds, if you could get Olsen there to add some power. And there's a guy that could hit 40 home runs, get you 100 runs, 100 RBIs, and it all is going to come down to the average. But I think Olsen is a guy right there in the top 50, especially it's all about roster construction. If you get some of that speed early, I think Olsen's a nice complement to some speed guys that you get in the first couple of rounds.
Yeah, no doubt about it. That's kind of the concern with power these days. Olsen can be one of those guys that you can get later without taking like the Alonsos or the Rileys of the world a little earlier. So definitely a target there. And you made a great point. Is he didn't really fall off too far. He's the Olsen of old. He's didn't hit for an average, which he's done that once. So like we shouldn't expect that from him. Frank, who's one of your guys in the 1 through 50 range?
Well, Bubba, I've listened to your podcast before, so I know this is a player that you'll sign off on as well. And it's Jazz Chisholm, who has an ADP of 48. Look, I love the player. There's no doubt about it. He's one of the most fun guys to watch in all of baseball. I have his jersey, just got it for Christmas. He's great. Health has been an issue. That's the biggest downside for Jazz Chisholm. He played just 60 games last year with a stress fracture in his back and a torn meniscus. But when he played, he was really damn good. 254 batting average, 14 homers, 12 steals in those 60 games. That is a 35 homer, 30 steal pace over 150. Can he get to 150? I'm not sure he could get there, but that's just to show you what the upside could be. I think he's a player that could return first round value if he ever does manage to stay on the field. He improved his plate discipline tremendously last year, lowered the strikeout rate, raised the walk rate. He also crushes the ball, something you don't normally see from a middle infielder. 90.4 mile per hour average exit velocity, tied for second at the position. 16.7% barrel rate. That is by far the best at the position. So ideally, talking about roster construction is a good point that Ronis brings up. I probably want 2 safe hitters before I draft a Jazz Chisholm, but if you play in a 15-team league, you can get him in the early 4th round. You could take 2 hitters with your first 2 picks. You could take a pitcher in round 3, and then you can come back and get a Jazz. So as long as you have that safe floor in your first 2 picks, that's at a point in the draft where I'm willing to take that risk on someone that I think can return first round upside, and that is Jazz Chisholm.
Yeah, Jazz is what first, you compliment my eyes and now you talk Jazz Chisholm. Let me buy you a drink first. Like, come on. This is great. But the question I have for you with Jazz, and I love Jazz, like you said, what are the concerns with going to the outfield now? Because like he's got to learn a whole new position. We've seen that happen with young players. It kind of sometimes affects just the production at the plate to begin with. Plus now roaming center field with a guy that already has health issues, probably not the most ideal situation. So like, what are your thoughts on that? Adam can weigh in on this also if you have any opinions on this.
I thought it was a mess of a trade just overall for the Miami Marlins. They didn't really need another middle infielder. I felt like they gave up too much in that trade too. And then on top of it, you have to move your best player to a position he's never played at any level, even in the minor leagues. There's definitely concerns there when it comes to the health. Roaming center field, probably have to move around more than you would have to do in the middle infield. So I do worry about that. Again, the ability to stay healthy, there's question marks there. When it comes to like the mindset, can this like throw him off learning a new position? I really don't have those concerns. He has a lot of moxie. He's a really confident player too. He's already said like, I think I could be one of the best center fielders in the game. So I have no doubt he's going to be confident that he could figure it out. To me, it's really just the injury risk that comes with center field.
Yeah. What about you, Adam?
Well, I think it's different for everyone. We've seen players change position and it does affect them mentally. I know in softball, we moved Frank from first base to the bench and it really did affect him at the plate.
Not
so, but I mean, look, Jazz is definitely alluring just because of the skill set he has. I mean, the ability to contribute across the board. He can run wild, man. When you look at the stolen bases and we know that everyone's expecting an increase in stolen bases. I mean, this guy, if he could stay on the field, I mean, you could get 30 to 40 with some power. But there is a concern. I think when you are changing positions, it's a mental thing. You're thinking about it too much. And I think it takes away from your ability at the plate. So then again, I mean, he's a pretty good athlete. I mean, it's not that difficult to play the outfield. There's obviously some aspects that he's got to learn, but So I think there's a slight concern, but I think the injury risk is a little bit bigger. Crashing into the wall too. Like now getting used to the warning track. Does he crash? Like we see with Byron Buxton, right? Buxton's a little different though, but I think there is a slight concern with that. But at some point, you got to take a little risk, and there's definitely risk with Chisholm. But I think that when you draft them.
You 100% know it. It's more the roaming the outfield, the walls, the warning tracks, the diving on the turf in Miami compared to the infield, because he's aggressive. He's gonna go out there and give it all he's got. So that's my only concern. But I love Jazz. I think he's a risk worth taking. Like Frank said, it's a 30-30 guy, and there's not that many of them anymore. So it's a real big plus in that regard. The gentleman I am targeting from picks 1 through 50, and again, like we'll say it a lot, it's roster construction ideas, but it's Randy Arozarena. He's going around 37 right now, and with him, it's a 2020 guy with he sold 32 bags last year. Again, if we think stolen bases goes up, it could go even more. Not the most efficient base stealer, but the fact is they let him run whenever he wants to run, and that's a beautiful thing. So it kind of goes on the flip side of what Adam said. Like if you want to go take one of the big power bats early and don't get steals early, you can bounce back to the Arozarena part, and that's where the roster construction works in this one. You get a little bit of power, 20 plus home runs potentially, but the steals, going to get on base and score a ton of runs. 94 runs in 2021, 72 last year. Hit for a decent average too, 263 last year. He's always been a decent average guy, especially with the league batting average dropping down there. So I just love the upside in the stolen base department. You factor that in with the power he brings, and he's one of the few Rays that we can look at that is not platooning. Like we know he's actually playing, which is a plus. So you throw him out there, they let him run like crazy, and maybe Wander Franco starts hitting with power, and they get driving even more runs. Who knows? But Arozarena is a guy that I like to have circled if I don't attack steals early with like those early outfielders or early stolen base guys. As outfield dries up, go and grab him around pick 37, and then get some power speed there for sure.
Yeah, he was definitely someone I was looking at too. I was in a recent draft where I was considering him in the third round. It was early third round, so there were a few better players. So sometimes it's where you're drafting. Obviously, mid to late third in a 15-team league, I think he's appealing. Yeah, he doesn't have an elite power, but kind of steady across the board. And maybe the expectations might have been a little bit higher for him. And maybe some people are disappointed because we haven't seen elite power out of him. But again, it's steady contribution across the board, and the stolen bases too. And he's pretty efficient. He's 58 of 81 in his career. So he only got caught 12 times last year. So, and like you said, they let him run. So yeah, I like him because he's very steady across the board. And I think he pairs well with a Matt Olson too.
Yep,
if you
100%.
take a Arozarena and then Olson a little bit later, kind of offset if you only get 20 home runs, but you get the stolen bases that you don't get from Olson too.
Yeah, he's a really good player to target with Yordan Alvarez, too. If you take Alvarez in the first round, you're not getting any speed from him, but you're getting maybe the best 4-category contributor in the game. So I think that's a good point for Arozarena. One thing I'll point out with him, I know a lot of the times, we're all looking at StatCast numbers, and we're using that as a reason to draft or not to draft a player. I would just look away when it comes to Arozarena.
Yeah, don't look at him.
It's been a couple of years now where like the expected numbers are terrible. He doesn't hit the ball very hard, but he's a freak athlete. So he finds a way to outproduce those StatCast numbers. So when it comes to him, I'll just say, look the other way. He's kind of proven it the past 2 years. And I trust Randy Arozarena at this point.
That's a good point because I think we do look at these StatCast numbers so much. We have all this data and we look at it. There's always going to be outliers. There are certain players that are just going to defy, and he kind of fits there.
Yeah, and I love it with him because he's one of those guys, 50% ground ball rate, but that allows his speed to take over, get on base, steal bags. He has a phenomenal BABIP, and that's going to also make his StatCast numbers go down. That's just simple stuff there. So you just dig into it more, like you said, Frank and Adam, and it makes a lot of sense. And I think I like that steady contributors early. Just give me that floor, and we can take some chances later and go from there. Let's talk ADP 51 through 100. Adam, who is the batter you were targeting here?
I'm going to go with Corey Seager here. I know shortstop is kind of a deep position, but I like his price here. And of all, he goes to Texas. People are very worried, and we see his best homer season with 33 home runs. The guy makes a lot of contact. I think that average obviously will come up. This guy's a 287 career hitter. We saw 306 and 307 before last year. Obviously, we know the shift. He's going to be one of those players that has helped. Again, another guy, second full year with the team. We tend to see players not perform great their first year with a new team, adjusting to a new environment, new city. Although, again, he had one of his better years. But, you look at a lot of the underlying numbers and they show that Seager's near the top in a lot of these. You see a lot of red on the StatCast page. So I think, Texas will be a little bit better. Lineup is pretty solid. So, I like Corey Seager in this range. If you don't get one of those elite shortstops, there's a lot of good shortstops going early. If you happen to miss out, Seager's a good one. And I was tempted to take him in a recent draft where I already had a shortstop. I just felt the price was good. I did go in a different direction, though, but I think Seager could have a really solid year.
Yeah, and Seager's the cover boy for all the shift banning articles out there, too. So that could be a premium as well. Anything on Seager, Frank?
Yeah, I was going to say, this is the player that I had. One thing I noticed from Adam Ronis back in the day is that he would always steal my answers, and this is what I'm noticing here too, right? I had Corey Seager written down. The one thing, I haven't wound up with him in drafts yet because he's kind of a weird roster fit where I'm trying to attack third base early. I'm trying to attack second base. Shortstop is pretty deep. He doesn't provide any speed. So I love the player, but I haven't wound up with him in drafts yet. I think he could blow up this year. I think he could be, like a Yordan Alvarez light at the shortstop position. I think I agree completely with what you said about the shift restrictions. I was reading the Baseball Forecaster. They point out that left-handers who make a lot of contact and hit line drives are likely to be the ones that see the biggest increase. It's exactly who Corey Seager is. His expected batting average last year was 283. Everything is trending in the right direction for Corey Seager. I love grabbing him in like that 5th, 6th round range. I just haven't done it yet because it's kind of a weird roster construction fit. Love the player, but just kind of a weird fit right now for me.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing with Seager for the last few years. People have is how do I fit him into my bills, and I think that's the fun part about these early. We all do shows, we all do podcasts, we all do mock drafts or whatever you want to call it, and you can kind of get these different builds. Like you guys know, pitching's going so late already compared to what it's been in recent years. Now, do you go pitching early and then start getting your Chisholms, your Rosarena, and then Seager maybe fits in, stuff like that. So there's just different ways to piece the puzzle together. And that's what's kind of fun about this game. The guy I am going to target here is Jose Abreu. I think he's a pretty simple one to target here for many people. It was a down year for Abreu. It's pretty simple, but when you have an ADP around 90, I think that's just a lack of respect for the talent that is Abreu because, the power wasn't there. That's what people look at, 15 home runs, but he still hit 304. Strikeout rate dropped to 16%, which is the best of his entire career, which is impressive. Still scored his runs. Average or the RBIs weren't what you'd expect, but as a whole, the White Sox offense was not what you'd expect last year. And now he goes to Houston, which we know is a great ballpark to hit in, a great lineup to hit in. The Crawford boxes will be great. We'll have to see with Abreu. He's a big opposite field guy, so that'll be a whole approach I've already kind of had people fight back with. But when you look at Abreu, you look at just the Astros philosophy as a whole. You got Altuve, you got Bregman, you got Pena. They all pull the ball to those boxes. You'd imagine Abreu is a good enough hitter to maybe work on that a little bit in the offseason. Who knows? But, we say don't, be a diehard believer of StatCast, but still, when a guy's not producing the barrel rates, the hard hit rates, everything you want to see for quality of contact from Abreu was just fine last year. Was just fine. So I'm expecting, you might not be a 30 home run guy, but you're getting 20 to 25 homers in that offense, gets you over 100 RBIs. Should be quite productive. And this is a guy we used to be drafting in picks, 60-ish or so. Now you're getting him an ADP at 90. It's a primo spot for me. I love Abreu in this range.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ross.
Yeah, he was also on my list. I just took him in a NFBC Draft Champions, was picking 3 overall, late round 7. And I was like, I pushed him up a little bit. But I guess, is this also a case of people not liking older players? I mean, we know that some of these older players, I mean, I know he's 35. I get last year we didn't see elite power, just 15 home runs. He had 30 home runs 2 years ago, but I think it's changing teams, man, and going to this Astros lineup. I mean, it's such a good spot. You alluded to all the good StatCast numbers. The guy can still hit, man. He makes great contact. He still hits the ball hard. And you're getting a guy that should hit for average, which we know is very difficult to find as you go deeper in the draft. A lot of the top guys are early, 304 last year, 261 2 years ago, 317. He stays on the field. There's a guy that is pretty durable. So, yeah, I mean, I'm hoping his ADP stays in that range and he doesn't rise too high because I really like getting him in that 7th round in a 15-team league.
Yeah, I think people just have Abreu fatigue too. He's been around for so long. And like last year, even with only hitting 15 home runs, he was the 73rd overall player in Roto. His ADP has moved back. He returned $16 worth of earnings last year, according to Razzball too. So he was still really productive last year, just didn't have the power. And now he's going over to Houston, where I think the expected home runs there for him, if he played all of his games in Houston last season, were 22. If he gives you mid-20s home runs with those counting stats and a great batting average, he is a steal at his current ADP.
Yeah, I mean, the counting stats have to go up. Remember, the White Sox had major issues last year. So many injuries. Eloy Jimenez, Luis Robert, Tim, all these guys out, and he was the one constant in there. So that's obviously going to affect his RBI total and his run total. And in that Houston lineup, though, so yeah, I agree, man. I mean, I like him in his spot.
Yeah, it's a gift. He should be going higher come March for sure, as you guys are saying. So take advantage of it while you can. Frank mentioned $16 of values. We're raising money for ALS Association here at PitchCon, and I saw a note in the chat: $2,500 already. The goal is $10,000 when we're all said and done. So go to pitcherlist.com/PitchCon to help raise some money. 100% of all money raised goes to the ALS Association. Adam Ronis, let's go to the next bracket here: 101 to 150. Who are you targeting here?
All right, this was a guy that I picked up in a few leagues last year, free agency, and I wasn't sure what I was getting, and it turned out to be really good, and that is Taylor Ward for the Angels. 23 home runs last year, pretty good strikeout rate, solid walk rate. I know kind of came out of nowhere. Did have a little bit of struggle. I think it was August, but really like this Angels lineup, especially if the guys can stay healthy. And if you look at a lot of the stat casts for Ward, barrel percentage 86th percentile, X slugging 89th percentile, max velocity 86th. So he was pretty solid last year, and I like the price here. I think he's a guy that can get you some power, hit for a decent average. And again, I like the lineup here for the Angels. So I'm buying on Taylor Ward again, and get you like maybe 5 stolen bases.
Yep. Yeah, Ward was on my list, so I'm with you there. I did an Angels preview podcast and really brought to light a lot of the things because I remember the struggles in August you mentioned, but then if you go look at his September numbers, it was gangbusters again. It was an amazing finish of the season, which was good to see. So big fan of Taylor Ward with you on that one. Frank, who's your next guy?
Yeah, next up for me is Seiya Suzuki. He's going at an ADP of 108.8. And just a preface to all this, outfield really dries up fast this year. So I think Taylor Ward, if you could wind up with him or Seiya Suzuki as your outfield 3, I think you want at least 3 outfielders by that point in your draft, especially in 5 outfielder leagues. So just something to keep in mind. It was an uneven rookie season for Seiya Suzuki, which is totally fair for a player coming over to the States. He was awesome in April where he hit 279, 4 homers, an OPS over 900. Then he was awful in May, and he missed just over a month with a sprained finger last season. Returned in July, and then he was productive once again. 271, 10 homers, 6 steals over his final 70 games. Projections really like Seiya Suzuki too. Like even more than I thought they would like him. Steamer projections have him for 25 homers and 10 steals. I know ATC is a little bit lower on the power, but overall 20 to 25 home run projection, double-digit steals. He's got that 1 year under his belt already, and I don't think the Cubs are going to be a great team, but their lineup has improved. There's no doubt about that. Dansby Swanson coming in. We'll see what Cody Bellinger could give them. Ian Happ had a pretty strong season last year as well. Hopefully we get Matt Burbis at some point, someone who people are very excited about as well. So all of those things considered, Cubs are going to be better. 1 year under his belt, a little bit of power, a little bit of speed. I think there's lots to like with Seiya Suzuki.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And you mentioned the outfield falls off. It's the big kind of final pocket push of guys and get you like double-digit steals, double-digit power. Not a ton, but enough to be very, very fantasy relevant here. The guy I'll talk about here, because Ward was one of the guys on my list, but I'll go Max Muncy here. I'm buying back into the bounce back. We saw the second half really start to look like the Max Muncy of old. And he hit 196 last year. Don't expect that to happen again. The walk rate was still in line with career norms. The strikeout rate was fine compared to career norms. But the power really showed up. We know he was battling that injury. Like he could have had Tommy John surgery and just kind of went away, or he could have got the bracket surgery or whatever Trevor Story just had and disappeared for a bit. He really started bouncing back in the second half. His quality of contact was just fine. I think we're going to be in for a big Max Muncy year. And another reason why I really like Max Muncy is he gives you second base and third base eligibility, which is a middle infield CI guy. at this point in the draft, I think is a really, really big roster build asset, especially in your DCs that you're drafting right now. So Max Muncy's a guy I'm looking for the bounce back. And for anybody that's listening to my content, I'm usually not a Max Muncy guy. So I'm in on him at this price tag this year.
The position. Go ahead, Ron.
Also very good in on base percentage leagues. I know those are starting to increasingly become popular. Tout Wars uses it. We know he walks a ton. He's usually around 15% walk rate. Yeah, the average was terrible last year. But yeah, that was the thing that was surprising too, because I think I stayed away from him last year because I was definitely worried about that injury coming into the season. And then to see him finish the year the way he did, I mean, that power came back the last couple months. And that multiple position eligibility is certainly key as well.
Yeah, the position is fantastic, Bubba. That's exactly it. Second and third base. I mean, if you wait, that's another one where he's kind of the fall off. He's the last that you could find at third base that you really feel good about. Same thing with second base. You got some guys earlier on like Jimenez and Edman where you can get the steals, but if you just miss out on those guys and you're looking for some pop, second and third is great. From August 1st on last year, he was basically Max Muncy, 247, 12 homers. The barrel rate was 14.7%. That's the player that we've seen when he was healthy. So I think it took some time, but over the final 2 months, we finally got back to Max Muncy last season.
Yep,
it's possible people forgot about that too. You know, if they checked out early or they weren't paying as close attention or they just look at the overall numbers, they might not realize that he did return to the player that we expected over those final couple months.
And like someone in the chat mentioned, he's going to hit in the middle of that order because they've had a little bit of a change up in LA, like with Turner out and some other guys. So it elevates them even more. So it's a good spot for Muncy and company, which hurts as a Giants fan to say the Dodgers are going to be good again. Let's go ADP 151 through 200. Adam, who are you targeting here?
Despite the jersey I have on, which is Mets, I'm actually going to go with a Yankee here. I see Frank with his little Yankees in the background, which is disgusting and nauseating. But I'm going to go with Harrison Bader. He's got some speed, some pop. You know, we saw him miss a lot of last season, came back late after being traded to the Yankees, especially was good in the playoffs. But he's got a little power, a little speed, 17 steals last year in 86 games. He's a player that I've been drafting for a while, and it's just never really lived up to those expectations. You know, he's had like 12, 15, 12, 11, 16, 9. But, you know, he really seemed to play well as a Yankee. Now, we'll see. I guess he's probably going to hit more towards the bottom of the lineup. I would like to see him hit higher. I guess there's always a chance he could, but he looked really good when he came over in the postseason for the Yankees. So I think he's a guy, little power, little speed. You guys mentioned about how thin the outfield is, especially when you're talking 15-team leagues and you need 5 outfielders. So I think in this spot, Bader's a nice target here.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree completely. The projection systems really like him too. Each projection on Fangraphs has him for at least 15 home runs and at least 17 steals. So if you're looking for not only outfield, but speed at that point in your draft, it's a pretty good target.
Not too shabby at all. Frank, who is your target in this range?
Yeah, everyone's favorite breakout hitter. It's Lars Nootbaar. He's got an ADP of 183.3. On paper last year, his season was just mediocre, 228 batting average, 14 homers, 4 steals, but he got on base at a 340 clip. He's got a great eye at the plate, and he crushes the ball. 91.7 mile per hour average exit velocity, 90th percentile, 12% barrel rate. That was 85th percentile. And something I love about a young left-handed batter is the ability to hit same-handedness. He was awesome last year against left-handed pitching, 273 batting average, 846 OPS. The downside for Nootbaar is that the Cardinals have a lot of talent right now. Tyler O'Neill, they've got Dylan Carlson, Juan Yepez, Nolan Gorman is still on the bench, Alec Burleson, and they have arguably the top prospect in the game in Jordan Walker, who's getting ready to debut as well. The one thing that I will say to that is they had trade offers, or at least, rumored trade offers in the offseason for Lars Nootbaar, and they shot all of those down. So clearly the Cardinals really, really like this guy. I think he's someone that could work his way up to the top of the lineup, given that OBP, his eye at the plate. I think the batting average could come up a little bit, and the power could absolutely be legit. So there's a little downside with the playing time where if he struggles, maybe he kind of misses out on there. But I'm a firm believer. Cream rises to the top, and I do think Nootbaar is a really, really good player.
He's a tricky one for me. I like the talent, but that's the playing time I'm always concerned with because Edman's just hanging out. So, like, even if you just flick him down to the bottom part of the order, it changes it up. But the talent's there. Like you said, everybody's favorite. So that ADP is going to keep climbing, which would be a lot of fun as well. I'm going to go to Frank's team also, and this pains me a bit to say, but if you waited on first base, Anthony Rizzo is quite enticing in this range. If you decided to wait at first base, the average has fallen off in recent years. 224 last year, 222 a few years ago. Used to be a pretty consistent average asset, but 32 home runs last year. I don't see that changing in Yankee Stadium. That's one of the reasons I think he wanted to come back. That short porch in right's a beautiful thing for his swing. He's a great OBP machine as well, consistently over 10% walk rate. He'll drive in some runs. He'll score a handful of runs, and he'll even get you 5 or 6 stolen bases, which is great to see with Rizzo. We saw his barrel rate the highest for his career last year, which was great to see. I'm just a big fan of Rizzo in that ballpark, in that lineup. So I think that's a strong spot. If you decide to wait on first base or you want a late quarter infield and you're looking for 30-plus home run upside, Rizzo's a great spot.
I've typically waited on first base this year, and I wound up with Rizzo or Rowdy Tellez in a lot of my drafts so far. So I like it a lot. One thing you have to keep in mind is he's likely due for at least one IL stint per season. He's been dealing with this chronic back condition, but even if he gives you 130, 140 games played in the middle of that Yankees lineup, the counting stats should be good and likely 30-plus homers again.
Yeah, I think he is a good target. If you do miss out on a top first baseman or you don't get one early, like you said, you're going to get 30-plus home runs in that stadium. I'd expect the counting stats to get a little better. Yeah, you project him for about 130, 135 games. Even when he doesn't go on the IL, he'll miss 3, 4, 5 days in a row with that back issue. And I'd expect the average to go up a little bit too. It is going to be low at times because he hits so many fly balls. At least last year he did. We saw a big increase in the fly ball rate, but you will take it because you know that's going to lead to a lot of home runs with that little league porch in right field at Yankee Stadium.
Little league porch in right field. There it is.
How's that a hater? How's that a hater?
Oh,
I gave you a Yankee already in this segment.
Why is Citi Field bringing the fences in, huh, Ronis?
Because they should. I mean, that's a pitcher's park, man. Come on.
Because they want home runs too. It's just the way it goes. Do a listener question here real quick because we're moving along pretty well here. BG11 asked, just in the range we just talked about there, do any of these guys stand out to you as potential targets? He put Polanco, Haniger, Nimmo, or Alec Boehm. That floor is open for either one of you guys. Do either of those guys look good to you?
That would be Jorge Polanco, I'm assuming, right?
I'm assuming, yes. I don't think Gregory is an option much anymore, hopefully. So, yeah.
Yeah, for me, it would be Polanco. I mean, he's a guy that I've always liked. Did disappoint last year, battled some injuries, but still hit 16 homers and 375 at-bats. Walk rate's pretty good. So I think he's a guy that could bounce back, maybe get you some power. I don't think there's going to be much speed there with him, but I like him in that range. He's way cheaper than he was last year, and I think he's a guy that could bounce back. Of those mentioned, I think that's the guy I would go with. Yeah.
Mentioned earlier, second base is not great. If you miss out on those early guys, I think falling back on a Jorge Polanco or even like a Jonathan India bounce back, I think that's fine. Alec Boehm is someone that stands out to me specifically in deeper leagues where if you just want a higher floor play, I think that's Alec Boehm. Last year, he hit 280, 13 home runs, really good counting stats, probably going to hit in the middle of that Phillies lineup early on in the season with no Bryce Harper. So he's not sexy by any means, but good batting average and a higher floor play for those who are in deeper leagues.
Yeah, I like the Polanco call as well. I had India down as a potential guy if someone picked Rizzo, so I'm in for the India bounce back. And it kind of goes to what Frank said. It's the second base really, really starts dwindling after the top 200, and it gets dicey. Like you can go Colton Wongs of the world and stuff, which is fine, but you know what you're kind of getting yourself into at that point in the draft. The other person asking many questions or comments, I should say, in the chat is one Paul Sporer. You guys might have heard of him. I'm just going to tell you, Adam and Frank, we might want to reconsider our picks because apparently it's lining up with Sporer's draft picks, and I don't know if that's the greatest thing. Could be. He did good recently. Did pretty good recently, but I also like to make fun of Paul Sporer because he's my buddy. But now there it is. He's talking now. All right. Let's move along here, and we go from 201 to 250, and it gets a little more interesting here. Adam, who are you targeting in this range?
Third base seems to be kind of thin. I don't like the age on this guy, but I've always been a huge fan of him as a hitter. Just watching him play a lot, pissed off that the Mets couldn't find a way to figure things out with him. That's Justin Turner. Going to Boston, probably going to hit cleanup, probably going to be the DH too. So maybe that keeps him on the field a little bit more. That green monster, maybe we see probably see a lot more doubles. Maybe we see some more power. I'm not expecting a ton of power as he's getting older, but certainly could hit for good average. I know the Red Sox lineup's a little bit weaker than years past, but at least he's going to have Devers and a few good guys in front of him. Maybe that helps the RBI total. So this is more just third base. If you don't get a third baseman early and you're kind of looking, I think Turner still has something left despite being 38. And I think being the DH and not being out in the field could help him a little bit. So Turner would be the guy here at third base.
I agree. I think the DH is a huge part of that. I think that's going to help him a ton because that's always the concern. Similar like you said with Rizzo, he might not go on the IL, but he'll miss like 3 or 4 days in a row type thing. And that's like more annoying than just put him on the IL. So I can like do something with him and figure it out. So I'm 100% with you on that with the Turner calling. That's quite enticing, especially, rival of the Yankees and all.
Always helps, yeah. No, but I would be. I know I joke around a lot, but I've always said this. Look, when you play fantasy baseball, you throw your allegiances out the window. I hate 100%. The Yankees, but I'll draft a lot of Yankees. I think I had every Yankee starting pitcher on a fantasy team last year. I had Cortez, Cole, Severino. So yeah, we talk about it, but you're going to lose fantasy baseball if you play that way. You've got to draft guys, even rival division. Like, I mean, I'm a Mets fan. How am I not taking in Atlanta Braves and Philadelphia Phillies? They're good.
Yes,
definitely. So I joke about it a lot, but I don't care. If you put up stats, you help my fantasy team win. I don't care. And I just 100%. Root for that team to lose. Like if I have Yankees and they're on offense, all right, I hope the Yankees put up runs. And
lose 11 to 10
last year. It was tough last year because I had Cole, Severino, Cortez, Tyon. I had like every Yankee pitcher, and I'm like, I want the Yankees to lose tonight. Oh wait, I have their starting pitcher. Damn it.
You need to be in a quality start league or join the tout league. I mean, where we just care about innings pitched. We don't care about anything else. So go throw 7 shutout and then let the bullpen blow it and see where it goes. I agree. I talked about Muncy for crying out loud. So I'm with you on this one. Frank, who you liking in this range?
Well, to stick with the theme, I'm going to go with a Boston Red Sox player as well. And I'm going to go with Tristan Casas, who has an ADP of 240.1, former top prospect with big pop to all fields. We saw that on display last year. Really small sample size, only played 27 games. Of his 5 home runs that he hit, 3 of them went to the opposite field, including 1 over the Green Monster off of Garrett Cole. I mean, to do that, your first taste in the majors, it's pretty damn impressive for Tristan Casas. Advanced plate discipline, he had 19 walks in those 27 games. That was a 20% walk rate, 358 OBP. Again, we get in trouble with these small samples, but he started to figure it out too. The final couple of weeks, 13 games, he hit 316. He lowered the strikeout rate during that time, made a lot more contact. The Red Sox clearly believe in him too. They cut Eric Hosmer, whatever, it's Eric Hosmer. So, and they gave Casas the runway here to be their starting first baseman. We've heard about him for years. Lofty comparisons. We've heard like Joey Votto and Freddie Freeman thrown out there. I don't know if he's going to do that, but as a corner infielder later on in your drafts, 20 to 25 home runs with, if everything works out, I think the upside to push 30.
It's a fun target for sure, because the ceiling is very, very high with a guy like Tristan Casas. And in the chat here, PJ322 says Casas versus Torkelson. And like Torque had a horrible first year, but the finish of the season when he came back, the peripheral stats look a lot better. Like he looked like he was starting to maybe get comfortable. And if you listen to the early Tigers reports, he's locked into the job. Miggy said he's the first baseman. Miggy's there just to kind of like mentor him, which could help a ton. What are your guys' thoughts on that one, Casas versus Torkelson?
I'm taking Casas personally. I still think it's a better ballpark to hit in, though they did bring the fences in a little bit in Comerica, so that should help Spencer Torkelson. I'm not done with Torque yet, but I do prefer Casas a little bit more.
What about you, Adam?
I have not done my rankings yet. They'll probably be done in a week or two, I'm assuming. But I lean Casas right now as well. I think he's going to get an opportunity. I like the way he finished the year as well, so I lean towards him right now.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's an interesting build with Casas at 240, and you got Torque at 302. So you're getting like a 4 to 5 round difference depending on your format. I lean Casas with you guys, but Torque I'm not giving up on yet. I think there's still something there. And at that point in the draft, if it's like a deeper format, I could see some upside there for sure. The gentleman I am picking, this is tough, but we mentioned how outfield dries up. So if you're still looking for outfield late and you want some upside, I'm still a believer in Ramon Laureano in this range. The biggest reason is I like the power speed combo he brings to the table. It's like 15 to 20 homers. He hit 24 back in 2019. I think he's got 15-ish steal potential as well. It's just always been a health thing with him. That's a big thing. That's why a lot of these guys are going later in drafts. but he's supposedly healthy coming into this year. Actually, it was a suspension and a health thing recently, but he's supposed to be healthy this year, supposed to be good to go. The A's have no reason not to play him. So if he goes out there and plays 140 plus games, I wouldn't be shocked if we somehow run into a 2020 upside guy in Laureano getting closer to pick 250. So that's the guy I'm looking at right now. But there's a lot of interesting ones, like Will Myers was mentioned in the chat. I'm a big fan of that. There's a few guys in this range where you can take chances. Like, I want to ask you guys about someone. What's your thoughts on another Oakland Estuary Ruiz, who might run crazy but might hit 220?
To me, he's one of the hardest players to figure out. I mean, even prospect people that I talk to, like the range of outcomes is all over the place for this guy. And I think I saw somewhere that he was performing really terribly in like Dominican Winter League too. So there's
That's
that.
not ideal.
Yeah, I mean, he's going so late, and he's a guy that could potentially give you 30 plus steals, where if that's the skill set you need, yeah, I mean, it's a low risk, high reward payoff. So, I mean, at that point in the draft, post 250, I'm willing to take that shot as like my 5th or 6th outfielder.
I think you kind of have to be desperate for steals at that point, because you're going to get no power. He's projected to hit 9th. He doesn't walk. I just hate having those players on my roster. I tend to never do it. It was funny because we were talking on my show yesterday about players in the 2000s, and we were talking about Juan Pierre. I don't know if you remember. Frank, maybe you're a little young for this. But he went like in the 2nd, 3rd round at one point, and I was asked, why did he go so early? I'm like, well, people for the steals, and he actually had a decent average, but I hate having those players on my team. I just don't think it's a good build when you're getting no power from that position. But back to Laureano, that's a guy that I've been taking every year.
Yep.
And I'm trying to figure out what to do. Are you concerned at all with how horrendous this lineup is, what it's going to do to his counting stats?
The counting stats are a giant problem. I think where I'm drafting him, I'm just hoping, get me 15 to 20 homers, 15 to 20 steals, and run into maybe a combined 130 to 140 runs and RBI somewhere along the way. That would be ideal to me. It is tricky though. And on the bright side is, maybe he gets traded. The A's are good at that kind of stuff, and if he gets traded, it's going to be a team that probably needs an outfielder with that kind of upside. So that could be a plus as well. Because I'm with you. Like, I stare at him. Like, there's certain drafts I just let him go, and I'm like, I can't do it. And there's other drafts I'm sitting there with roster construction going, I could use another outfielder that might give me 15-15. Like, this is a big spot on the team, and that's where he's very tricky because he's got the upside, but there's so many question marks.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at on the per game basis, I mean, like you said, if we can get him to 130, 140, you are probably looking at least 2015, potentially 2020. And then it comes down to what the counting stats are going to be. But yeah, he is intriguing in this range. And I'm someone who has convenient amnesia, man. I don't allow, if a player burn me year after year, you've got to forget it. I think that's a mistake a lot of people make. Yep. They say you have a 5 shares of a player on a team from the previous year and they burn you, people are like, that's it, I'm not going back to them. You got to have a clean slate and look and go, okay, what went wrong? Can it change this year? And I think people do it, especially if you've had Laureano the last few years, and I had. So I'm trying to get that bias out of the way and kind of look and see, okay, is this a guy that could fit? But based on the ADP, I think you're right. And especially if you have some pretty stable players, I think if you take a lot of risk and then you put them on the team, that's not a good idea. But if you have some pretty stable players up top, yeah, there's definitely the potential for 15-15, 20-15. And you just have to hope that maybe the top of the lineup in Oakland surprises us.
Yeah. Big hope.
Yeah.
Last question I'll have for you guys from a person in the chat here in this range. And it's a fun name, Randall Grichuk. When he went to Colorado last year, expectations were through the roof. Like, oh, he's going here, good stuff. Wasn't the best of seasons. Kind of got a little better as the season went on, but not the best of seasons. Is this a guy you're willing to, again, I love what you said, Adam, about the biases thing. That's a big thing we all have to work on all the time because it's real simple to be like, this guy burned me, I'm done. Grichuk could be one of those guys for a lot of people, and maybe that's why he's going later now. He's still in Colorado. So is this a guy that interests either one of you guys?
Not me personally. I haven't drafted him yet. He's kind of changed his profile over the years. When he came up, he was like mostly power, lower batting average. Now he hits for a little bit better batting average, but the power is just kind of like mediocre. 19 homers last year, 22 home runs the year before. They traded for Nolan Jones this offseason too. So I wonder if they'll try and mix in young outfielders. I know it's the Rockies. They don't play their young guys, but I haven't targeted myself. He just seems kind of boring, which at the point that he goes in the draft, I guess it's not a bad thing, but I think there's probably guys with more upside I'd rather take a shot on.
Sure.
All right, the simple answer is play him at home, bench him on the road. I mean, look at those splits last year. 307, 13 homers, 50 RBIs in 69 games at home, 66 on the road, 205, 6 homers, 23 RBIs. Oof. I mean, that is just, it's absurd. Home OPS, 851 on the road, 583, 366 WOBA at home, 258 in a row. I know it's one season, but we always talk about cores and the advantage. I mean, this is the epitome of it. So I know probably a lot of people watching are not in shallow leagues. I'm sure you're hardcore if you're paying attention to fantasy baseball here in January. Yep. So, like, if you're doing, like, I know you guys, I'm doing a draft Champions League now. It's not ideal to have them on the roster.
Yep, it's tricky. Definitely tricky. This will probably be our last grouping here. ADP 251 to 300. It's getting deeper, 100% more roster construction type stuff to fill the holes or taking chances. We'll see. So, Adam, what do you like in this range?
Yeah, this name was just mentioned by the chat. I was like, damn it. It is Will Myers. I mean, going to Cincinnati now in that ballpark. I know he's dealt with some injuries, at least last year. He played 146 games a couple years ago. But, I think you'll see some power rebound here playing in this park. He's been in San Diego for a while. The opportunity to play every day. We've seen players go over to the Reds and just put up numbers. Look at Brandon Drury from last year. So in this range, we talked about outfield too being thin. So this might be your potentially 4th, 5th outfielder in a 15-team league. I like Will Myers here.
Yep. I'm 100% with you. He's one of my favorite targets here, first base outfield guy. Big fan of him. What do you like in here, Mr. Frank?
Yeah, I was actually debating Will Myers as well. So 3 for 3 across the board. I'm going to go with Jesse Winker, another outfielder, 4th, 5th outfielder this time, 277 ADP. He was awful last year. There's not much about, can't say much about that. Can't really defend it. Went over to the Seattle Mariners and just did not work out. But he is 1 year removed from hitting 305 with 24 homers, a 949 OPS with the Cincinnati Reds. Back in 2021, 110 games that year. He now gets a huge park shift as well, heading to Milwaukee T-Mobile Park in Seattle, 19th in home run factors for lefties. American Family Field is 5th best. So that is a huge positive park shift for him. Health is an issue. We know that he had knee and neck surgery this offseason, but he's entering a contract year, and it's just kind of funny how those things work out at times where players manage to stay healthy in their contract year. Should mainly DH, which I think could help keep him on the field. But even if he plays 120 games, I think there's a chance we can get back to 280, 20-plus home runs, hitting in the middle of this Brewers lineup. So Jesse Winker, it feels like people are kind of burying him right now, but in those deeper leagues, 4th or 5th outfielder, definitely willing to take a shot.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation there in Milwaukee. The other one I'll mention here is Trey Mancini. He's near and dear to my heart for those that pay attention to my show. I love Trey. I think this is a great spot for him in Wrigley Field with the Cubs to DH pretty much every day, so it keeps him off the field. Last year's home run to fly ball plummeted quite a bit. I'm not sure if people keep track at home, but he was playing in Baltimore for the first half of the season where that happened to many a right-handed hitter, and then he platooned in Houston. So it's one of those things we've mentioned with a few other guys. If people just look at his stat line, they're not going to see the whole picture with Trey Mancini. Still got 18 homers, hit 239. But this is a guy that, 255, 291, 242, 293, usually a pretty decent average guy, 25-ish home run upside there. The projections only have him for like 19, but a 250 average. I really like him in that Cubs lineup. It's not like the best lineup in the world, but I think it's gotten better over the last month or so. I'll give them that much. They've kind of built a little something in Chicago. So I think Trey Mancini at this point in the draft does bring you some power upside. I think a little better batting average than a lot of people in this range. So I'll take some chances getting him out of Baltimore and a platoon into Wrigley Field. So that's what I like.
It's a good point you bring up about leaving Baltimore too, Bubba, because if you look at StatCast home runs versus expected home runs, Trey Mancini was the biggest loser last year. He hit 18, expected 25. That's because of the new dimensions in Camden Yards last year where they pushed those left field walls back so far. Getting into Wrigley, I think that's something I can get him back over 20 home runs. If you just wait this long as like a corner infielder, I think it's totally fine.
Yep.
How much do you think his ADP will rise? Because obviously it was a recent signing, so I know we were looking at since January 1st.
To be fair, since January 1st, he's gone as high as 228. Mm-hmm. So that would definitely take him out of this range.
Right.
wouldn't be shocked if he sits in that 220 to 210-ish, 215 range.
That's you still like him there, right?
Yeah, I still do. Yeah, I think just the fact to play every day, DH, if not, once in a while play first base or the outfield in that ballpark. We know how offensively good and bad Wrigley can be depending on the wind. But you get him there, you get him playing road games in Great American Small Park and some other stuff. I think anywhere but Baltimore is a beautiful situation right about now. So I'm a fan of that. Well, we got a few more minutes here. Let me just get your guys' opinions on this. We're talking hitters, and this might affect things. It is the early talk from Toronto. Does anybody have any thoughts on this? They're bringing the fences in, but like quite a bit in like right center field, but they're also making them taller, which makes it still a little bit of difference. And, I'm no, physics expert or scientist. I play fantasy baseball. What are your guys' thoughts on looking at this? Because at first glance, it's like, hey, go get Brandon Belt, go get these guys because they're going to love it. But then, there's some smarter people than I that are saying not so fast. It might not be as big a deal as you think. So, Adam, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, it's always difficult to know without data and without seeing it. So I think that, they only have a couple lefties in their lineup right now. They're right-handed heavy. So, yeah, look, I've always said you put Brandon Belt at Yankee Stadium, that guy's hitting 40 home runs. I know you watch the Giants way more than me.
Yeah,
but I've
yelled it for years. I'm like, he's a 35 home run dude.
It's
like,
insane. I'm a night owl, so I watch a lot of West Coast baseball, and I've seen Brandon Belt crush balls. I'm like, that's gone, and it hits the wall and right center.
Triple alley. Like he's like 420, and it's like
and it pissed me off because I've always liked him. I know health is a major issue for him. I get that, but he would be, and his OBP is good. So I'm intrigued to see him. He's obviously going to DH. He'll obviously sit against lefties, but I think that's a guy that could see a boost. And where's his ADP? I haven't checked. It's got to be it's probably very low.
He's 428. Yeah. He's gone as high as 322 though since this happened. So yeah, he's I think
I'll take him there. I'm a sucker for Brandon Belt, and I'm sure he'll burn me again and miss games. But again, if he's going to DH, that should help a little bit. So I think a guy like him, just leaving San Francisco in general, should help. But people were right though on Baltimore last year with the right-handed hitters, but I think that was kind of obvious, right? That was an obvious one that we all kind of saw that coming, that the right-handed hitters would be hurt. So with Toronto, I'm not 100% sure right now.
It's tricky.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of a wash too, right? Like if they're pulling the fences in a little bit, but they're raising the walls, like maybe it creates like a few more doubles or something like that. But overall, like I wonder how it affects someone like Dalton Varsho. Typically, I haven't been a Dalton Varsho guy. I did not draft him at all last year. I know he's going in the third round of 15-team league, so it's a pretty big price to pay. But typically that first year in a new environment, I like to shy away. But, man, a lefty, if they're pulling the walls in there, maybe Dalton Varsho is someone that can, pop 30 home runs as a result.
Yeah, Mike Kurland did a little research when that first happened, and Varsho is one of the biggest pulled fly ball guys for left-handed hitters in baseball last year. So if you are looking for anybody to potentially benefit from this scenario, a guy like Varsho would. He's still got that catcher eligibility. He's only going to play the outfield, so he's going to play 140 plus games easily. Well, I should say easily. And so you throw that out there, he could definitely be a huge benefactor there and see where that goes. I also like what you mentioned there because we always, fantasy heads go straight to the home run department. But you mentioned it could be more doubles. It could increase batting average, which is a big thing to think about because, it's like the Green Monster. How many guys do we think are going to hit home runs? They just hit doubles off the wall over and over again. So it's great for batting average, and that's an awesome thing. I don't think at least I know I don't factor that in enough. And the first thing I think of is, there's Brandon Belt. I'm 100% with Adam on that. I'm like, Belt's going to love this. This is a beautiful thing for Brandon Belt. But in reality, it might just be more, doubles and stuff like that too. So interesting situation for sure.
Yeah, batting average is a category I think we don't look at enough. I think it's one of my Achilles heels when it comes to real competitive leagues is sometimes we overlook it. And then you are like 2 months into the season, you're like, damn, why is my batting average like middle of the pack or at the bottom? And it's like, it's definitely something that you have to pay attention to more. And hey, look, we're allured by the home run, but if the batting average does go up for those guys, it's big. And for Varsho too, because that's one of the issues with him. As appealing as he is, it's the batting average. So if that batting average can go up to even 260 to get a catcher with the at-bats he's going to get, the power and some speed, it's very difficult for me, though, to take that guy in the third round. Getting a catcher that early and investing in. But I guess you kind of have to look at it in the other sense. He's not really a catcher, right? He's playing outfield and he's going to play 150 games. And that is a big advantage when it comes to other catchers at the position.
And I did some recap pods earlier this offseason about using the Razzball Player Rater and whatnot. And Varsho, just as an outfielder, was like in between 15 and 20. I can't remember the exact number off the top of my head, but he still finished very good as an outfielder. And we're playing him at catcher, and it kind of at least made us sit back and look at it and go, because I'm with you, Adam. Like at first glance, you're sitting third round pick. Like this is tricky. But you start thinking about it, like as an outfielder, he still qualifies pretty darn awesome, and you're not playing him in the outfield, and so it changes it quite a bit, which is interesting. And this must be a player that Paul Sporer likes. He's telling us to move on, which is good. So let's keep talking about this. Frank, you were going to say something though. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I was going to just piggyback off the point that Ronis made about batting average, that I'm trying to be more conscious of it this year, because if you build a batting average hole, especially in any type of NFBC format with an overall, you're not climbing out of it. It's just so hard at that point. So you really need to be conscious of that in the draft. And I'm doing a DC right now where I started Jordan and Mike Trout, which is great for batting average and power, but I have no speed. So, you're going to be chasing regardless, but it is something I'm trying to be more conscious of this year is batting average.
Well, to be fair though, I think if there's any category you would rather try to get later in the draft, like you're kind of saying there, I'd rather attempt to get speed if I could. Yeah. I'll go that route, especially if, knock on wood, we assume they're going to steal more bases, which that's still a big assumption because we don't really know how that's going to play out. It's a whole other thing. But we just mentioned a bunch of people as we went through this that you can get 10 to 15 steals from throughout, so you can accumulate it. But you locked up with Jordan and Trout, you locked up maybe 75, 80 home runs, maybe more, with both of them could over 300, and you wouldn't be shocked. Like at least 280 plus, which is pretty tremendous. So that's definitely an option. You guys have been doing some early drafts. We'll get wrapped up here pretty soon, but you're doing early drafts. What is kind of the go-to builds you're seeing you like the most? Are you going for the heavy power guys? Do you want the balance early? Adam, what are you kind of seeing so far?
Yeah, I actually have not done a lot of drafts. I'm in the middle of my first draft now. The unfortunate pitfalls of doing 3 sports.
Yes, that's true.
But so I like to get, obviously, if I can, the balance guys early on, a little bit of every 5 categories. I noticed with pitching, it's falling a little bit compared to last year. There's a lot of pitchers I kind of like in a 15-team leagues from like rounds 4 to 8. There's a lot of good arms in there that actually might be better than some of the early arms. So that's what I'm noticing so far, is that I like some of those pitchers in that range. So I'm willing to take more bats early on. I am willing to take a closer early in a draft Champions League. That's another thing that has been a problem. A lot of the previous closers I've targeted years, round 7, 8, they get hurt, they underperform. So I actually did take Emmanuel Clase early in my first draft Champions League.
Ronis, you're speaking to me, man, because in this draft, I got Jordan Romano. I took Zach Wheeler in the 4th round. I took Max Fried in the 5th round. So I've been willing to wait on starting pitchers as well. I think that 4th, 5th, 6th round, wouldn't mind waiting and grabbing one of those guys as my SP1. I've done 2 DCs so far, and I've been in the middle part of the draft. I could confidently say I don't really love the middle part. I think I want to be on one of the ends this year. Obviously, if you're in the top 5, you can get one of those.
I was going to say top 5 seems appealing.
Yeah, those 5 category contributors. But even on the back end, then you can at least get an elite third baseman. You can get like a Machado or an Austin Riley or someone like that, and then you don't have to worry about the position. So what I've learned, don't really love the middle part. I probably want to be top 5 or back 5.
Yeah, I've been noticing I want like 4th or 5th, or I want the back end, like you're saying. That's kind of where I've been enjoying things so far. If you get too close to the front, it feels like that 2-3 turn is not as ideal as you'd hope it would be. It's still great, but it's not feeling like you feel like you've missed out on some big parts to the puzzle real quick, which is interesting as well. So it'll be fun to see how it all breaks out as we got a lot more going on. The bright side is most of the main signings and everything are done, which is rare for this season, so we can actually plan accordingly.
That's a big thing. We haven't had a season like this in a long time. A normal spring training, a lot of guys sign. Hopefully that brings people back.
Yeah, hopefully it should be great as we continue to ramp up here. Like you said, spring training, pitchers and catchers, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, usually around Valentine's Day, which is a beautiful thing. Final thoughts: Mets, Yankees. I'm going to give you guys the floor here. Who has the better team this year, Ronis?
I think the Yankees pitching staff is really good. I'll say the Mets slightly, but it's close. I like the Yankees starting staff. I really do. The Mets obviously improve, but the age, Verlander and Scherzer, that's the biggest concern there. The bullpen, I would like to see them add another arm, and they probably need another bat too. So I think they're going to be really good. Their division is tough, though. The Braves are so good.
Yes.
The Phillies are good. The Marlins are always competitive. It's pretty close. I know Frank's going to say the Yankees, though.
No, I'm actually not. I mean, I'm mostly a pessimistic Yankees fan, and I think the Mets are the better team from top to bottom. But for what you mentioned, the division that they play in, it wouldn't surprise me if the Yankees still have the better record, just because the Red Sox I expect to be pretty bad this year. The Orioles are getting better. You know, Tampa Bay always kind of does their thing, but I think the NL East is more competitive. It's a tougher division, so I think the Mets are the better team, but I think the Yankees might have the better record. So.
Yeah, I'm curious. I'm looking forward to seeing if Ohtani ends up in New York at some point in time. That
Mets,
should be
not New York. The Mets,
yeah,
please.
Mets. Yes, it'll be the Mets.
No. New York is fine. New York is fine. We can make
it'll be the Mets if possible. And I guess I'll ask one more question because his name keeps popping up in the chat everywhere. So I'll get your guys' thoughts on this. Austin Meadows, I'm out, but you're getting him really cheap compared to years past. Just last year, again, this could be the biasy thing that Adam was talking about earlier. It looked really bad. Like there was nothing to really gain, in my opinion. But Adam, do you have any thoughts on Austin Meadows?
Yeah, he's a player that I've had too that kind of burned me. If it's really cheap, I'll take a shot because at that point, what do you have to lose, right? If it's really bad early, you can cut in a redraft league. And that's the other thing too, is sometimes that I've learned over the years, you know, we all have our opinions and we go out here and pimp players and say, yeah, this guy's going to be great. If you see signs early on that aren't good, you got to be willing to let go.
Yep. How about you, Frank?
Yeah, I'm not really in. I mean, I'd rather just take a shot on like the Jesse Winkers or the Will Myers that are going in the same range, or even just take a shot on someone that has some speed like Ramon Laureano. It's just not really much to get excited about. Maybe there's some pop, low batting average, but it's a really bad lineup too. So not really expecting the counting stats to be there either. He's still young enough where it wouldn't surprise me if he bounces back, but not really for me.
And the thing is, he's still young enough, but the overall power skills just completely just disappeared last year. And he's still in Detroit, which is not the most ideal situation either. So, yeah, I'm not really in love with any of it, all things considered, with Meadows. So it's a tricky one for sure. I'm with you, Winker, Laureano, Will Myers, a lot of guys in that range that I'd be much more inclined to take some chances on when all things are said and done. But there's the man. I was wondering where he was. I was
waiting for you to properly end it, and you just didn't. All right.
I was waiting for you to wrap it up.
You guys are Flushing Meadows. I understand. It's fine. Okay. Thank you so much for this wonderful panel, as you guys did not get that joke clearly. But thank you so much for being here. Really, this was a fantastic one. This is the one I'll probably be watching over again because I need this help. This is exactly the help I need. And I will be targeting Alec Boehm everywhere, clearly. That is what I'm going to do. That was my takeaway. No.
He slept through in the panel, apparently. He just figured that out.
Yeah, right. No, that's because of Ariel Cohen. I said it before. I was hoping you guys would talk about it. You didn't, but it's fine. Bubba, Adam, Frank, thank you guys so much for being a part of this. And yeah, I mean, it's baseball season. It's coming.
Yep.
I love it. Soon. Love this time of year. Once the Super Bowl ends, you start to feel the winds changing the baseball season.
Right? You can smell it. But all right, the other guys have waited far too long, so I gotta kick you out of here. See you guys.
Later.